Greetings, everybody. My name is Brian Rice, and I have the honor of being the program manager for VCDX. I should make clear that I'm the only person you see here in front of you who is not himself a VCDX. I can never become one myself. I know too much. They would have to kill me. And we are joined today by VCDX's numbers 1, 2, 5, 22, and 45. So I think we have a fairly representative panel to help you learn about how to prepare in the best possible way to attempt VCDX, VMware's Apex credential. With me here on the podium is Mr. John Ershid, VCDX number 1. Yep. And we have over there Mustafa Khalil, Jean-Francois Richard, Ben Lin, and Mahesh Rajani. And later on in this show, we are going to do a simulation of what the culminating exercise in the road to VCDX looks like. The defense panel, in which you stand in front of a design that you created and answer questions from experts. Before we kick off, I'm going to do a very short PowerPoint presentation. In essence, I'm going to go through it at a speed that you will almost consider rude. Because I want to leave as much time as possible for you to see the contents of this exercise. So before I kick off, John, anything you wanted to add?
I do want to add also that we have some VCDXs that are in the audience. Some may be wearing shirts like this or otherwise. I see Jason in the very back there. Are there any other VCDXs that are in the audience right now? So these individuals can also answer questions, and basically we are going to be doing during the scenario an opportunity to call on individuals to participate actively as part of this program. We'll talk a little bit more about how we're going to do the scenarios when we get to that section. So I'll let you lead off with the presentation.
Thank you very much. Well, as I said, I'm going to make this very brief because, frankly, I'm just the warm-up act. These guys are the main event. So let's get started. We have the standard disclaimer, of course. We have the IT journey, the journey to IT transformation slide, which I bet you've seen dozens of times now. I won't say anything about that. In essence, VCDX is a hybrid credential that reflects both your achievement in the realm of vSphere design and your achievement in the realm of vSphere technology and the ability to communicate it in a way that in a way that we believe correlates with your success in the field of vSphere design. The benefit is all about recognition. You get to join a very elite group that VMware helps to publicize, and you gain added influence, added clout, and it's a very, very powerful boost for the career of anyone who achieves it. The pathway is rather long, but I believe that many people in this room have already begun it. It keys off on VCP. At that point, once you achieve VCP, you must prove both your technical hands-on mettle using the VCAT DCA credential and also your design mettle using the VCAT DCD credential. Now, we do have technical training courses that support these, but I want to make clear that just attending the courses will never be enough. You need to have real-world contact with design projects, interview people who have done designs, do as many designs yourself as you can, do postmortems on existing designs. That's a technique that a lot of people overlook. It is this kind of thing that really prepares you to do well as you attempt the later stages of the process. As I mentioned at the beginning, when you reach the pinnacle, your challenge is to stand in front of a design that you created and defend it. Defend the choices you made in front of a panel of experts. Now, the selection of the design you make is very, very important. You want to pick a design that allows you to demonstrate a broad range of skills. You'll notice that first bullet point there has several bold-faced words. I want to explain to you why they're bold-faced. Business requirements are a key input to this process. This is not just a technical credential. This is not VCAT DCA warmed over. You must start with an awareness of customer needs, and they should be sophisticated customer needs. Here's a rule of thumb. If you're looking at a design thinking whether you could use it for VCDX, if you can't think of any time in that process where you thought, wow, the customer wants both A and B at the same time, how are we going to do that? If you didn't have that sensation, that may not be a good enough design to support you through this process, because you want to show how you successfully address tough choices head on and resolved them. I want to make it clear that we do permit fictitious components of designs and fictitious designs. Some people use this because they have aspects of their design that were confidential and they need to replace them to avoid breaking confidentiality. Sometimes people are career changers. They have spent time in parallel career tracks and believe that they've learned enough and demonstrated enough to reach this pinnacle of excellence here. There's a lot more we could say about fictitious designs. I'm going to be posting in the VCDX community forum in the next couple of weeks an article specifically addressing how to succeed with fictitious design. So we're not going to go into that here. Here's a diagram of the process. When you submit an application, the first thing that happens is that it's checked by non-technical personnel at VMware for correctness and completeness. We're not looking for the correctness of the design per se. Rather, are all of the pieces parts that need to be there present? After all, it's not beneficial to anyone for an application to go through the whole process if key aspects were missing or in a format that is very difficult for evaluation to occur on. Now, the next step, assuming that the application is complete, a fee of $400 American is collected, and the next step is that a tech review is performed. This means that an existing VCDX reviews the document and assesses it according to a predefined scoring mechanism. And I haven't gone into the scoring mechanism up here because we don't disclose the exact details of that mechanism. But we do tell you about the outcome, the intent. In essence, the way to make sure that you pass beyond this stage is A, to make sure you have not committed plagiarism, that you have said everywhere in your application where contributions from others occurred. The use of a template is a contribution from others. You must disclose all of these things. They don't count against you, you just must disclose them. The next step is, do you have a material chance of success at the second part of the exercise? After all, if we allow people to proceed to the defense stage who really don't have a chance, we're doing someone no favors whatsoever. If people do not make it past this stage, they get a letter highlighting the areas of their design that received the lowest scores together with suggestions for improvement. Now let's assume that they pass and they move on to the next stage. There is a defense fee that is collected of $900. We really believe that this is a bargain credential compared to, for example, Microsoft Certified Architect, which costs $25,000, plus you must spend a week in Redmond. So they're one of the programs that we compare ourselves to, and we pride ourselves in being less burdensome for candidates than that. In any case, candidates who make it to this stage are invited to appear in front of a panel in person. We have these around the world with multiple locations every year. They tend to rotate among the geographies. We are aware that there are some geographies we need to give some more love to. We have never had one of these below the equator, and that is something I intend to rectify. Again, I have not gone into the details of the scoring mechanism, but those 4 decision diamonds up on the slide tell you, in essence, how to succeed. Fully understand your own application. Have an encyclopedic knowledge of the design you submitted because it is your work. Be able to explain the trade-offs, the pros and cons of every decision you made. Have a technical understanding that correlates to what's in there. If you introduce a technical component, you're expected to have mastery, a deep understanding of that component, and you can be asked questions. Last but certainly not least, you'll be quizzed on the various aspects of the VCDX blueprint. The VCDX blueprint identifies a number of areas where you must display skills, and I'm going to show you some of those in the next few slides. If you succeed on all 4 of those boxes, you receive the credential. Let me tell you a little bit more about what's up front, first of all. Those are the details of what goes into the application. You can read it online. I'm not going to bore you with it. But look at that orange box. This is one of the main mistakes people one of the main mistakes people make early in the process that is an unnecessary impediment. Make sure that your document doesn't say one thing in one place and then another thing 30 pages later. You will be called on that, and it will either decrease your odds of being accepted to defend, or it will cost you time during your defense. This kind of QA exercise will pay off big time. At the day of the session, there is an interview process which consists of 3 parts. I'm not going to go into detail on this here because John is going to introduce this to us in a moment. I do want to emphasize that this is not just a PowerPoint dog and pony show. The PowerPoint is a means to an end. We request that people bring a presentation that highlights their design. It should be designed to be given in approximately 15 minutes, but its only purpose is to set the stage for the discussion. That's all it is. You're not measured on how beautiful your PowerPoint slides are. You're not measured on the duration of that presentation. Instead, it's just to provide structure and provide kickoff. And frankly, it's an aid for the candidate, too. It helps them keep their train of thought together. So, go ahead.
Also, be aware that although it may be very beneficial when you work with a customer or the individuals that you're doing the design for to give a lot of explanation, we need it to be short and to the point, because there is the potential for having lower scoring if we don't get through all the questions to clarify things in your design. If we had confusion where we couldn't give full scoring, now we have an opportunity to be able to address those questions. So if we ask you, and this would probably be the moderator, but it's also possible for the candidates to do this, if we ask you to keep it short or try to close out your thoughts, we're not trying to be rude, we're trying to make sure that you have the best chance of scoring so that we can get to the point as quick as possible.
Absolutely. Very good point. The panel consists of 3 VCDXs and a moderator, which in many cases, though not always, will be me, and a number of observers participating in either their own professional development as panelists or else helping us gather data to improve the program as a whole. It's always in a private room with whiteboard or other writing implements. You can bring very few of your own personal implements into the room. Don't plan on bringing anything into the room other than a USB drive with your presentation on it. There are a couple of other things that are possibly permitted, and this is all detailed on the website, but that's the important one. So these next 3 slides here summarize at a very high level what we are looking for and how to succeed from an intellectual perspective. This is an extract from the VCDX Blueprint, a document I encourage you all to download and study. There are 3 main areas. The first step is the pathway from a customer's requirements to a logical model of what a design for that customer might look like. And it is measured according to those 5 design qualities up there. Your logical design must show how you intend to deliver availability, manageability, performance, recoverability, and security. And we expect to see a relationship model among the components that supports what you're claiming to achieve. The next section is the physical design, where you continue the mapping from the design qualities that you identified and your strategies for achieving them to the components of what would actually get installed in the customer's data center. VMs, hosts, storage, network, and management technologies. Throughout your presentation, you need to make sure that you're showing an awareness of a need to give appropriate, relevant, specific implementation guidance to the client. You must be prepared to identify risks and say how you mitigated them, and you must communicate clearly, crisply, and concisely throughout. Those are the 13 metrics by which VCDX candidates are measured. The way to get the credential is to achieve a score of minimally qualified on all of them. It's pretty simple, isn't it? So a few quick tips, and I'm not going to go through all of these in the interest of time. I want to emphasize that the next to last bullet point there is a key factor for success. Thinking out loud. You are measured not solely on the correctness of what comes out of your mouth, but the soundness of the decision-making process you employ. And frankly, if you're silent, nobody knows the decision process that you're going through in your head. Revealing your thinking is always in your interest. And of course, using the whiteboard is always in your interest as well. I'm going to, at this point, because we are now at the first section of the exercise, turn the show over to Mr. John. Thank you.
So first off, I want to do some additional introductions here, and I'm going to ask the individuals to stand up, and I'm going to give you a little background on their role when we get to the scenarios. First off, Mustafa Khalil. He is VCDX number 2. If you could stand up. He is going to act as one of the panelists. We're going to have 3 panelists. Jean-Francois, who is VCDX number 22. He is actually, it's kind of funny that you guys sat next to each other, 2 and 23, but he's going to act as an observer. Observers are used to actually get them trained, and also as we go through the process, to help do some clarifications. Sometimes it's possible that things might have been misunderstood. It's an opportunity to get some additional clarification as we go through the scoring process. We have Ben Lin. This is VCDX number 45. He will act as a panelist. And we have Mahesh Rajani on the far end, number 5. He actually is going to be acting as a panelist as well. So we have 3 panelists, 1 observer. I will probably act as an observer as well. But what we're going to do, we're not going to do the actual scoring, but we're going to go through the simulation of individuals participating and walking through both the design scenario and the troubleshooting scenario. So if you are interested in participating, I encourage you to come closer to the front. We may need to move the microphones a little bit, but we'll repeat any of the comments that are made as we go through this. So what we're going to do is we will provide a scenario. Scenario can be 1 to 2 slides. Typically, we have 2 screens, and this way you can actually get information, assuming that it's coming from a customer. So in the design scenario, we may provide information such as requirements, constraints, experiences. I'm going to ask a general question here and see what your feedback is, and that is, when you go to a customer or you go to your organizations that are providing input, do you always get 100% complete information or 100% accurate information? No. Good. I see most people are shaking their head no. It's a fact of life. This happens. And a lot of times you can get conflicting requirements. Oh, I've got a budget of this amount. I need 7 nines. Oh my God. It's like, never heard of anyone do that before. Okay, so what is the requirement for having those 7 nines? And do you realize that your budget is no way going to be able to support that? These are the things that we all go through, maybe not that extreme, but that's an example. But we need to actually, as architects, understand how do we address those conflicting requirements, requirements that may conflict with constraints, things such as we are a sole source vendor choice as a customer, therefore we can only use this particular vendor's product suite. Therefore, you may have to make some other considerations as you go through the process. During the scenario, the panelists are going to be acting as if they are your peers. This means that you would be explaining, there's actually 2 aspects to it. There's the troubleshooting where there's the customer side, but there's the design area where they're going to be like peers, coworkers. So you can actually be explaining as you go through the process. You can ask for some clarification. You can ask for some additional information that can be provided. We do have certain types of canned answers that we do provide, but there is also flexibility for doing some ad hoc answers based on the scenario and based on the questions that you ask. Obviously, we don't want to have, 10,000 answers there to cover every single possible type of question that may come up. But you have the ability to look things up on the internet. You won't have a device, but you can ask the panelists, hey, I need to understand exactly what RAID 4 is because I don't remember it off the top of my head. They'll come back and give you that definition. That will help you on moving forward. Asking the questions, thinking out loud, as Brian mentioned, is very, very important because as an architect, we do expect, as we go through a process, there's going to be certain decisions that we need to make, and we aren't going to just grab an answer just off of the top of our heads in every single situation. There will be some where, I know exactly. This is better to do maybe iSCSI versus NFS for a particular reason, and you can explain those reasons as you go through that. Another thing that people do is use a whiteboard. We won't have a whiteboard here, but you can kind of talk about what you might be taking notes on as you go through the process. That whiteboard is an ability for you to sketch out diagrams, sketch out notes as you're getting answers, and it's basically going to be up to you on how you go through that process. Another thing to recognize is as you go through this, I said before about keeping things short and to the point, but if there's one thing that you do not want to do is say, am I doing the right thing? Did I give you the right answer? Did I give you the answer you expected? We can't answer that. That would be very unfair. What we're doing is we want to see you with confidence provide feedback, and the questions that you ask are related to helping support you make a decision, not necessarily confirming what you've said. Another thing is, I'm going to just make this really quick because I'm the one who introduced this rule, because when I hear somebody, my cultural background is that I will nod my head to acknowledge that I heard you. It doesn't mean that you said the right thing or that you're on the right path. I'm not going to shake my head this way. I always acknowledge people. Other candidates may face other panelists that may have similar things. We will be straight and to the point. Gestures and other things, taking notes on our keyboard is more for scoring. Things like that is not meant to distract you. We're trying to basically give you an opportunity to speak, so forget about the personalities of the individual on the panel. Focus on what you need to get your answer, to get to that final answer. So the key thing here is we've covered a lot of the information. I'm sure you've read the rest of the bullet items. The duration is about 30 minutes. For this scenario, we're going to make it a little bit shorter. We're actually going to use a timer that we do use in the panel discussions, and that's basically an iPad. It's a very expensive timer, but it works very well for the scenarios that we go through. So the candidate, as well as the moderator, and the panelists and observers know exactly where we are on the clock, and we don't have to break in and say, oh, you got 5 minutes left or whatever. We want to give you as much time as possible to complete the exercise. Design scenario tips. Sketch your ideas out. Think about do you have all the information you need? Do we have the correct information? Do you need some clarification? Definitely cover your strategy. What are you trying to achieve based on what you've been given so far? And then don't be silent. This is one area if the panelists are asking you to speak, what you're thinking about, to try to do some diagramming, we're trying to encourage you to follow the process so you can get maximum scoring. We have 2 samples that we're going to run through right now. And this is going to be part of our scenario. So I have a question. How many people here, I may pick more than one individual, but how many people here would like to participate in the scenario? I don't want to call out names. I'm looking for volunteers here. And people who have already done VCDX, if other people don't want to raise their hands, I'll let you guys as well. But I want to give an opportunity for people who haven't gone through the VCDX process or haven't completed the VCDX process to go ahead and raise their hands. I've got a hand raised over here. Would you like to participate? Yeah. Let's do this. If you could stand by that microphone, we'll do this. And I want to actually make it inclusionary. We can only have a certain number of individuals. We'll pick a different individual for the troubleshooting. But what I want to do is encourage the opportunity for people to provide feedback. Sorry, your name one more time. Brian. If you can provide feedback to Brian as part of that answer, or Brian, you could phone a friend, ask out for the audience, and I will call on whoever raises their hand to participate. This isn't exactly how we do it, but it makes it a little more fun, and it will allow us to do this in this type of a format. Design scenarios change. They get retired. So if you were to talk to somebody who has gone through the VCDX process, they really shouldn't be sharing that information because you sign a confidentiality agreement as you go through the process. But you can ask about what kind of things that they experienced in going through the process. That would be acceptable. Not all information is automatically provided, so you do have to ask questions for clarification. We're going to walk through this scenario in a role play with you, with Brian acting as the candidate. And we will have, once again, Mustafa, Ben, and Mahesh act as panelists, and JF acting as an observer along with myself. So what we're going to do, I'm going to explain exactly the process. And first off, can you guys read it towards the back as well? You can definitely come forward if you want to see a little bit closer. I will read this, and this is what we do in the actual scenario. Once we finish reading, or you ask the first question, the counter starts. So it's important to listen through this all and make sure you read it and understand it before you actually start asking questions, specific questions.
Say, John,
Yep.
the time is 11:58. How long do you think we should allot for this section?
I am thinking about 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, so here is the regular timer, and we will start the timer, but time will be up when it gets to 20. And just for fun, what we could do is to have everybody be the timer. Normally the moderator would be the timer. So when it gets to 2 minutes, yell out, 2 minutes, and we'll all laugh.
Okay.
And then when it gets to 20, done. And then we'll go on to the next.
Okay. So I'm going to read through this. Typically it takes anywhere from 1 minute to 3 minutes to read through this. But once again, the time doesn't start until the clock starts running. So this client has engaged a managed services organization to run Capacity Planner in their environment. The average consolidation ratio is anticipated to be 15 to 1. So 15 physical servers consolidated down to one virtualization server like ESX. NetApp Fiber Channel SAN is a constraint, meaning you can only use that type of a fiber channel device. Budget requires reuse of old hardware where possible. There is some new hardware that was purchased in relation to this project. It includes a 2-CPU quad-core HP BL460C, 2 onboard NIC ports, 2 NIC ports on 1 mezzanine card, 1 free mezzanine slot, and the customer has procured 5 of these new servers. You want to select the appropriate RAID levels required for the solution. That's one of the first requirements we have for you in the design. We want you to explain how the process of consolidation and containment will be implemented. We want you to design a cluster for a 2-host failure. During deployment of each phase of this project, you should factor in workload load balancing of all types of resource requirements, networking, storage, and compute, and use best practices to create a design. In this particular case, we're providing one additional slide that has some information related to that capacity planner session where we actually looked at information on what the hardware is, what the workload requirements are. So I'm not going to read through all the details here, and I can flick back and forth. Just let me know if you want to flip back and forth. I'll do a real quick one. We've got 200 servers total, broken down into 3 phases based on what we believe are low-hanging fruit to the more complex types of machines that need to be converted. In this particular case, the hardware is exactly the same. 2-way dual-core CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, 2 onboard NICs, and 160 gigs of internal disk. We've provided some additional information related to performance or workload requirements. I/O characteristics include read-write, which are balanced, read-only, or more writes than reads. Now, as a customer, the customer may provide information like this. It may not be as specific as you would like, so you can actually ask questions for more clarification. Number of servers, 90, 65, 45 for each of those categories. The operating systems are broken down here between Microsoft as well as some Red Hat, and the number of servers are also listed there. Now, I want to let everyone know that I did not give the panelists or the observers normally a prep sheet related to this, so we will do some of this off the cuff. And the reason why we didn't bring that in is because we want to make sure we don't leave it in a garbage can or something like that where it might be picked up and used by companies like Test King to do things that may not be appropriate or legal or following our guidelines. So what I'm going to offer up is, are you ready, or would you like me to flip back to read the other slide? Now, what he's doing right now is exactly what I would expect you to do as candidates. He's making notes. He's probably doing a little bit of thinking as he's making the notes. Oh, you got the answers on there. No, just kidding. Thank you, Mahesh. When we do smaller workshops like this, we usually will have 1 or 2 whiteboards up to make it a little bit easier. But the key here is, this is your time to make a couple of notes as you go forward, but I'm going to have to call time in just a second here. So what I'm going to say is, I'll give you one opportunity to go back to the other slide if you'd like, but I can flip back and forth at any point. Okay, don't think too hard because we're actually shortening this from a 30-minute down to a 10-minute. I'll go back to this one more time, real quick refresh. We got a couple of key requirements here. It's your job to make sure you include these requirements in the design that you're going forward. And I'm going to have one last question. How many people here think you can complete this design scenario completely in 30 minutes? Anyone? Okay, good. You're on the right track. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and start. Would you prefer that I keep this one up or the second one? Okay, just let me know. So if you could grab the speaker, we're now going to start the clock. Okay, I'm going to let you go ahead and ask questions and talk through the process of how you might start the design.
Is the NetApp SAN active?
Oh, if you could actually go closer to the mic, yeah. Thank you.
Is the NetApp SAN active-active or active-passive?
It is pseudo-active-active.
Okay.
Oh, actually, can I have a request? Could we actually have all the microphones on at this time? Thank you. Go ahead. Mustafa, could you repeat?
Yeah. So he asked, is it active-active, active-passive? I'm saying it's considered pseudo-active-active.
Okay. And do we have any information on the number of drive space needed for the VMs? I didn't see that in the slide. It basically just said there was roughly 200 VMs as far as workload.
So this includes the physical.
Right. So yeah, you would see here that you have the number of servers involved in each phase, and you have the number of operating systems instances in the physical environment.
Now, here's an important thing. There's one thing that you're missing. That is talking through what you're thinking about and what you're writing down so that we can share that with the rest of the audience. Yep.
I was mostly factoring out how should do LUN placement as far as, because I saw the number of instances.
So considering LUN placement based on that. Okay.
So usually in a real defense, you would have the whiteboard and you'll be writing those notes on the board. So it's a good idea as you're writing on the board that you speak out what you're doing and why you're doing that.
Actually, can I ask a favor? Can you stand at the microphone? Because I got to make sure for participation they can hear that.
Was this based on 4.0 or ESX5? What version of VMFS am I using?
Okay, so this is up to you as the designer to tell us what do we need.
Okay.
So we're doing a consolidation project, so you need to propose a solution for us.
Okay.
So think of it as a greenfield. We don't have an existing infrastructure.
Now, what I am going to do is when we get down, so you actually did the 30-minute on there.
That's right.
But when we get 5 minutes in, I'm going to move on and I'll let other individuals stand up at the microphone and they can actually ask questions as well so that we can get some additional participation. But I wanted to start out with one candidate so we can kind of see through. We're going to talk a little bit about what we see works and what doesn't work in the process that you're taking.
And so what we're looking for is the journey itself rather than the end result. We know you're not going to finish it in 30 minutes, like most of you already have indicated. So we need to understand how do you take the individual business requirements that we provided to you, and you translated those into logical design, and then how you take the logical design and translate it into a physical design.
How much total space do we have available on the NetApp SAN?
Whatever.
Do we have that on there?
Whatever space you need, I think.
How much do you believe that you require for doing this design?
Currently, it breaks out to about 32 terabytes. And so that's what I was asking, since we can only use the SAN, do we have sufficient capacity to break out LUNs and do that? Or do we need to get, like additional enclosures or something to add on to that?
If you tell us that we do need additional enclosures, we can do that. If we need additional disks or disk spindles, we can do that. Budget does require some use of old hardware, but if there is a requirement to use new hardware, you can propose that as well.
Okay, because the main reason I was wondering is, one of the main points of virtualization, I was looking at roughly, an 18-host cluster, because that should give me my consolidation ratio, account for n-2 and then an additional host for failover, like if you're doing maintenance or something, just...
Those are good thoughts.
To avoid, you're doing maintenance on a host, you have a crash, you still have something to account for that.
Yep. So asking those questions and actually providing that feedback as you're thinking through that is very positive for the individuals that are scoring. I'm going to ask the panelists right now, up to this point, are there additional pieces of feedback? Let's assume that we had finished on what was covered so far. What would you recommend to the candidate. One I would say is talk a little bit more, but I want to hear also from the panelists and the observer.
So I would say, can you flip to the other side?
Yes.
The other one. Make use of all the statistics that has been given, all the numbers that they have used. They are given it to you for a reason. So you may want to focus on everything that is there.
There are no red herrings thrown in, but there may be some information that may pose some challenges on your thought process for doing the design.
Yeah, so again,
at the 5?
The exercise is really about us taking a look at your thought process. So the more that you can utilize the whiteboard to articulate how you're going to go through each section and create a solution for that, it's really going to help us. Think of it as a 30-minute kind of quick design pitch that you give to the customer, but you need to sell them on something, right?
Now, I'm going to offer up, I'm going to let you continue, but I'm also going to give an opportunity for other people to come up. If other people have questions, come up to the microphone, and we'll go ahead and give you an opportunity to ask questions on that. Let's see, go ahead. So we've got on the left-hand side, Mike?
Either the microphone's too tall or I'm too short, one or the other.
Oh, sorry.
That's better. Hi, my name is Vern. So given the scenario that we had, the expectation is a 15-to-1 consolidation ratio, but we only have a limited number of new servers that were purchased.
Yep.
So my first question would be, what percentage or what number? We're going to need about, for a 15-to-1, the math works out to about 13 or less servers in our cluster, or in our solution.
Good observation.
So that being the case, we're going to have to reuse some of the existing servers. This is just my thought process as we're going through it. So that being the case, can we assume, or the question is, how many of the existing servers, the current physical servers, can we actually redeploy? So not only how many can we redeploy, but based on the CPU type, how many can we put together in the same cluster to form our cluster of n plus 1 or n plus 2?
That's a very good point, because you don't want to mix certain types of classes of processors or instruction sets, certain types of characteristics on the systems themselves. That is good feedback. So I don't know if
one more thing is you're on the right track, I would say. One thing is, don't take away the host that's currently running the current workloads. And if you take away some host from that, you keep in mind that if you take the host away from the current workload, then you're affecting the HA capabilities of that. So you keep that in mind as well. So when you propose something...
Every decision you make has a potential impact to other areas of the design, as Mahesh was describing there. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Brian, I'm going to give you one more, and then I'm going to let Chris behind you follow. Go ahead. Yep. Do you have one more? Okay, I'm going to let Chris ask a question first, because I got to make sure we move forward on this.
Well, he actually
and by the way, it's important to understand, so I'm going to make one critique. It's not a personal critique. It's more of, during the defense, being quiet for that amount of time really has a potential impact for not being able to score fully. So that's why you want to try to move fairly quickly. In 30 minutes, you can't complete an entire design, but there should be some things in here you should recognize as an architect of, I need to get some answers very quickly on this space. So I'm going to let Chris answer a question, offer up a question. Or
the other gentleman actually started down the same path I was, so I'm going to make something up now. Can we flip back to the other slide, please?
Yep.
The fiber channel SAN, is that actually fronted by a vFiler? Or is there a requirement to do NFS, or does it really matter?
It's a requirement to use what we have.
Okay. Well, I'm more familiar with the NetApp from the on a SAN with the vFiler perspective, right? So I would expect that would be an NFS configuration. So what I was thinking is the two existing machines, there are two onboard NICs. I'd want to know, are they 1 gig? Are they 10 gig? Is there the capability to do 10 gig if we have to do an NFS or a IP-based storage solution?
Yeah, so probably in something like this you can ask, do you have, what other licenses do you have on that NFS, on the NetApp filer? Do you have support for this protocol?
Support for NFS. Do you have support for
since we're coming from a fiber channel environment, most probably we wouldn't have NFS shares in place. We'd have only fiber channel.
Okay.
And those fiber channel LUNs are currently serving the raw data for the physical hosts.
Okay, so I can assume that the existing physical hosts have HBAs in them that are already connected into the SAN.
Right. So probably I would expect you, the next thing to ask me is, what firmware version you have on this array, so you can tell what features that it support. Does it support Aloha or not? If it supports Aloha with NetApp, that will be a key decision point for you to define how you're going to configure multipathing.
Right.
What was that?
So one other tidbit for the design scenario, listen to what the panelists are saying. Okay, don't just assume things or just gloss over things. We're trying to give you specific advice and direct you down a certain path. So make sure you're applying what we're saying to your design.
Okay.
Right. We play the role of the customers.
Okay.
And if you ask a question, so we tell you we don't know, means that it's not relevant.
Fair enough.
Okay. We'll assume that it's over.
Right.
What happens at the end will allow you to finish your thoughts. So if we go a couple of seconds over, that's probably okay, but no more than a couple of seconds. It has to actually come to closure. For the sake of time, we do need to move on to the next one. We will take volunteers for the next one, which is the troubleshooting. Let me run through that real quick.
Before you do that,
Yep,
I had one quick observation to share about the questions we had in the previous section. I noticed that nobody asked any questions about applications. Nobody asked any questions about business requirements. Are all these computers that are in that design scenario equally important? Do they all have the same SLAs, or are they different? Do they all have the same uptime requirements, or are they different? What applications are in there? I believe it's a common mistake of VCDX candidates to zoom too quickly to feeds and speeds. Keep in mind that all these scenarios are for a purpose, and the purpose is not technical. CIOs don't pay for stuff because they like 2 gigahertz CPUs. They pay for stuff because they have applications they need to run.
Yep, very good point. What we're going to do now is run into the troubleshooting scenario. For this particular one, we'll probably do about 5 minutes for doing the role play. And in this particular one, rather than have one individual go up to the microphone, we'll allow you to line up and provide feedback or provide questions, and we'll comment on the feedback that you give or the questions that you ask. So in this one, we're going to give you a problem scenario to troubleshoot. We are focusing specifically on design-related troubleshooting, not technical troubleshooting the way a support organization might do it. So is the problem in the design, or is it in the implementation? And provide some additional commentary on what you see. And by the way, all these scenarios have been used in the past. They were retired. After one VCDX session, we typically will retire them. We may go as many as 2 VCDX sessions. The rules vary. There is no rule specifically, but we actually identify how many individuals have actually used it to determine whether we keep it going forward. I don't know if you want to add anything. Okay. So assume the panelists at this stage are customers, not peers. We're going to ask you to do the same process, think through this, talk about what you would be doing in the process. You would normally run through this in 15 minutes. And so that's a little bit quicker. So some quick tips are very similar to what we talked about in the design. What does the scenario look like? Think about how you would normally troubleshoot an issue. Is it in the design, in the implementation, or something else? Show the different avenues you'll take. And don't say, I'm not sure what to do next. Am I on the right track? So we've got 2 slides, similar setup. We want you to ask questions. You can actually start lining up if you like. We'll have it on the screen. Let's focus on being very quick, short, to the point on the questions and the feedback that you have. So I'll read this. You have been asked to troubleshoot a recently built ESX proof of concept environment running ESXi for a customer. There are some reported issues. The Microsoft Windows 2008 implementation as a VM is 64-bit, and on this particular ESX server, now we have hanging over a period of time with that actual virtual machine or the application. Some user groups report loss of access to key applications. Access to the host will sometimes be non-responsive when connecting with a PuTTY SSH client, and sporadic slowness in the VMs. Configuration details. 100 VMs running on 5 ESX hosts. There are 2 quad-core, 2 gigahertz CPU with 64 gigs of RAM. The VM's files are stored on a single LUN shared between hosts. A mixture of VMFS and RDM is what is used. 10 gig backbone network. ESX hosts are redundantly connected to the production network. An accompanying slide will show the high-level diagram related to the supporting information. So in here you can actually see a core switch, distributed switches, 2 of them. We're seeing a number of different connections there. We're seeing it coming down to the actual access points and so forth, all the way down to the service processors and the actual storage. Here is your task. Analyze the current design and provide needed changes to resolve the issues that were identified and to prevent it from happening in the future. So I'm looking for volunteers. If you can, step up to
the timer now.
Yep.
We'll allocate 5 minutes for this section.
Here's your opportunity to kind of run through this and get some commentary feedback. So, okay, Chris, you look like the first.
For the connections from the hosts up to the switches, the redundant ones, are those ether channeled?
From the host to the switches?
Speak a little closer to the microphone.
Sorry, yeah. So the 10 gig connections up to the switches from the ESXi hosts, they're configured to be redundant. So are they from host A, VMNIC 0 and VMNIC 1? Are those are just single connections? Are the switches stacked in a failover configuration?
So the question is, are the switches stacked in an availability configuration?
We don't know.
Sorry?
We don't know. I need to check with our network admin.
Okay.
We're simulating the customer scenario. They may not have all the answers. See, so that might be considered a red herring, but this is what we actually do during this situation.
Right. Okay.
On the fiber channel side, is your array active, or active-passive?
This is an active-passive array.
Okay. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Go ahead.
Can't we just blame the network guys? Because that's usually what everyone does.
We'd like to, but
so we have everybody blames the vSphere guys.
Yeah. We've got 100 VMs accessing the disks, which could potentially be a disk bottleneck problem, but at the same time, we also have PuTTY access to the consoles being slow. Are we to assume that it's all one problem? We could have separate issues here. How do we go about troubleshooting? Do we assume it's all one? Is that valid for this scenario?
So it's your task to try to rule out, identify what are the symptoms and what can they be attributed to figure out are they related to the same issue or the different issues happening at the same time.
Do we have any disk metrics?
No, we don't.
Okay.
It can be obtained
we may have some,
for a follow-on meeting.
We may have some disk metrics, but can you tell me what you're looking for?
I would be looking for write queues, write queue lengths, things that would be coming from either any number of tools, or would I have the option to go and say, I'd like to install, IOmeter, or I would like to take a look at performance metrics from vCenter or something along those lines.
That's very good feedback. So if you do that during your defense, that will give us some insight into what your thought process is and give the ability for us to actually score more accurately based on what your skills are.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Mustafa, thank you.
I'm going to try to get through everyone that's in the line. If you do want to get in. We'll take all the questions, but we're going to have to cut it short in about 5 more minutes. So, right here.
So I noticed this was for ESX. Is Virtual Center in this picture so that they're clustered, or is there no Virtual Center?
There is a Virtual Center server, and it is clustered.
Got it.
ESX clustered.
Can you provide any ESX top feedback?
We can.
Yes. Well, which metric are you looking for?
I would start with looking at disk metrics for latency, and I'd also want to then move on to networking to see if there's any issues there.
Okay. The D average when the time happens is fairly high.
The which average?
The device average.
So this is where we test out, we're giving you realistic feedback, assuming that you are somebody who has that specific skill. So you can take it beyond that. If you don't understand, then I would recommend moving on to some of the other areas maybe. But you can always add additional questions for that. I'm going to try to get through, so I'm going to move on to the next person right now, so everyone will get a chance to do at least one piece of input. On this side?
Right. So the 100 VMs per loon sounds very high, and so I would go with that direction as well. Checking for the latency, you said that the average was high. How high was it? Is it over 20, over 30? How much is it?
The question is how high?
How high was the average, the device average metric? Do you know?
You're asking in milliseconds?
Yeah, in milliseconds.
Okay. Probably about 10 milliseconds.
Well, that's not very high. How about SCSI reservations? Are there any SCSI reservations on ESX top?
There are nothing beyond the normal noise that we see in the log.
Okay.
Okay, so one piece of feedback on this area is you're going down the technical path. On the question I have to ask is, are you doing something on trying to troubleshoot the design, the implementation, potential technical problems? I'm asking this not as a panelist, but kind of just to kind of get a feel for how you're coming up with the questions.
I'm trying to, the one loan for 100 VMs seems very, it's something that really caught my eye very fast, and I had to understand, are there any disconnects and things like that from the storage performance perspective, or are there any other issues like network issues and things like that? It seems like the configuration here is very redundant, and we're talking about 10 gigabit Ethernet. So
we've got a warning, so we're going to have to stop on that one. I'll take one more question on the right. My apologies, because we can't actually get through all of them. But there are forums on VCDX, so these are something that we're actually considering later on. I'll take one last one, and then we'll go on to the next.
So, I mean, I saw on the last slide that there's some host outage, you couldn't get to it, and that can be caused by storage issues or network issues. And I think there might be an assumption that maybe this is one or the other, and there could actually be multiple things misconfigured in the design. So I'd want to take a look at the whole course of it for timing on when these issues are going on. But if I were to dig into some of the technical details, I'd be curious on these NICs. I see one connection, but I don't know how many VLANs are going down that, if they're trunked. So I would look for, if your NICs are set, what's the load balancing policy on it? And then of the load balancing policy on the vSwitch, are all port groups and service consoles configured to use them all the same, or do you have some priorities on your service console, getting one active and sitting on standby for the other? Or so in this case, is there VLANs running through these NICs?
Okay, respond 30 seconds or less, and then we have to stop
there are
because
VLANs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you do it? What was the answer?
I said yes, there are VLANs.
So there are VLANs, and
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to have to. My apologies. We only have so much time for this session.
So
I did try to get 2 hours, but they wouldn't.
No, that's the right approach to take with the thought process.
I want to have something quickly. So, what's that again?
Hold on one second.
We can't tell you guys.
We're not looking for
we
the
can't
actual
tell
solution.
the answers.
We're looking
we
for.
don't share that information. You have a question? Good observation.
Which lines? From where to where? From where to where? From the service processor to the switches? Yes.
Line 1 to SPA, line 2 to SPB.
Right. So you hit on one major issue based on your common practices, right? So this is where the problem is actually, right? And what I was hoping for someone to ask is, can you show me some logs? What kind of errors you see in the logs? And then I would ask you, okay, what kind of errors are you looking for? You tell me, storage-related errors. Do you see any SCSI errors or stuff like that?
I'm going to actually have to cut it short. Right. We won't be able to finish.
So it's not just about the technical details. It's about your.
It's about how you think.
It's your troubleshooting methodology and the questions that you ask to gain all that information.
Right.
We have a quick question first. There's actually still about 3 more slides on this, but Brian has a question based on.
I need to make a quick poll. I think people are aware that there's an opportunity to attempt VCDX coming up in November in Singapore, and then there's another opportunity in Frankfurt, Germany in February. and I am almost ready to get approval to have the first VCDX 5 session in sometime in Q2, probably in the Toronto area, be also a VCDX 4. How many people are thinking of submitting a design for Singapore in November? Super. How many people are thinking about submitting a design for Frankfurt in February? How many people are thinking about shooting for Toronto sometime in Q2? Excellent. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I'll give you your mic back.
I'm going to go fairly quickly through these. I call them backup slides because they're actually trying to reinforce things. So we want to make sure we understand that you've got mastery in the design considerations and the rationale behind those design considerations. Anytime you make a decision in design, there is the possibility that it will impact other areas of the design or the requirements that you were given. The thing that I mentioned about the 7 nines, nobody does 7 nines really. I mean, you can, but there is a certain cost associated with that. We need to understand, are you going to be able to talk to the customer or the individuals that are asking for this and give them feedback as well as trying to see, can we modify this? Can you actually implement what they're asking for? Sound decisions are very important, and you have to understand all aspects of the design. Just because you may not be a storage administrator doesn't let you off the hook on answering questions from the panelists. If you don't know your whole design, then the areas that you're weak on are where you're going to score weaker in the final scoring. During your design defense, you should be able to provide a complete solution that addresses all requirements, constraints, and risks. But given that you have a certain amount of time to do this scenario, we're going to try to see you present as much as possible to actually cover that in the scenario side, but on the actual document that you provide, or the set of documents for the design, you have to answer all questions. You have to be able to cover all of that. And if you take too long, you have less of an ability to raise your score. Because what happens if we've got a lower scoring on the pre-evaluation? The defense is where you can actually help raise it and clarify for the panelists what you believe is the correct steps and how to correct it. Insufficient mastery, I've got the list up here. I'll just cover a few key points. This 30-minute scenario for a design is a starting point. Everyone does some kind of an initial design. They don't sit down for 3 weeks straight to do a design. They have an initial discussion, they get some material, they may go off and do some additional work, and then come back with some follow-on questions to take it a little bit further, and maybe even do some prototyping. That's something that you need to think about. You need to be able to provide this defense, even if you're, so I'm an extrovert, I talk a lot, I have no problem about not being shy, but many people may be introverts. You need to learn to overcome that. You also need to overcome going through slowly in your presentation and try to go quickly through it to get to the key points. So practicing with other people, sometimes a recommendation would be videotape yourself giving the presentation and have somebody else critique it. And don't criticize people if they give you feedback that sounds negative. They're trying to help you score as best as you possibly can. I would prefer somebody give me a lot of red ink all over my design and give me feedback on how I might be able to improve it rather than assume it's perfect and then I only find out once I go through the defense. It's a lot of time that you have to go through in this process. So also, don't wait until the last minute to finish your design and submit for that defense. We've got some additional tips. These are all up on the website. I'm not going to cover them because we're at the tail end. I think I have maybe 1 minute left. Yep. I'll close with that last one, but I'm going to open up for questions. Do I have like a minute or so? Yeah, okay. Quick questions. When he gives the signal, I got to end it because the other group will come in. We have some questions in the front. I'll take one and then two. Yes? What scope of the products? The core is the foundations, which is vSphere. You can provide additional material, but remember, we can answer questions on anything that you submit. Do you want to add to that? Nope. Okay. For VCDX 4, our recommendation is to submit a vSphere 4 design because if we can't evaluate it with the VCDX individuals to support it, then we won't be able to do that. I think I'm going to have to take your question offline because I think we're finished.